4 Calling Birds, performed by KVA.
Snow drifted along Marrowbone's narrow lanes in long, thin ribbons, as though something beneath the ice were exhaling in its sleep. Sister Hale Merrin walked with her lantern cupped against her chest, the flame trembling with every pulse of her heartbeat. She had chanted the 4th hymnal since she was 9 years old, back before her voice had gone to gravel, back before her dreams were filled with antler shadows and distant, starving wings. And tonight, her throat ached with a devout anticipation that tasted almost like fear. 4 calling birds. A simple phrase on the surface. A nursery lyric wrapped in ribbons and merriment beyond the village's borders. But here, in Marrowbone, it meant something vastly older. The ritual took place in the oldest part of the woods, Thorn's Hollow, where the birch trunks leaned inward like pallid ribs, guarding a secret heart. The villagers waited in their winter coats, faces stiff with cold or conviction. A few children clung to their parents, already learning the silence required for this night. Even the wind quietened as Hale approached. She always walked first. Always. At the center of the hollow stood the effigy, a human form woven from willow branches soaked in lye, stretched into an exaggerated height, its limbs bent backward as though caught in the moment of a final hysterical plea. Someone, likely the Rowan twins, had lacquered the willow with pitch until the figure gleamed in the lamplight like wet bone. Its chest cavity lay open, a cage waiting to be filled. And at its feet, shivering in their wicker pens, sat the 4 crows chosen for this year's calling. Not normal crows. These were thin, long-necked things the villagers bred for this single purpose. They had pale eyes like scraped glass, and beaks that clicked compulsively as though chewing on unseen threads. Hale had always felt a particular fondness for them. They reacted to her voice more than anyone else's. Even now, they turned their heads toward her lantern, as if recognizing the one meant to escort them to their task. She set the lantern down beside their pens, knelt, and let them drink in her face. That was part of the rite, allowing the birds to imprint, so the call they carried would return to her alone. "Hush now," she whispered, though the words rasped out more like broken reeds. "Tonight, we speak for the slumbering ground." The villagers bowed their heads at Skelmorach's title. Hale felt his name vibrate through the marrow of her teeth, the same way it had every year since she was old enough to understand that prayers in Marrowbone were not addressed upward. They were pressed downward, into the roots and cold earth where Skelmorach slept his uneasy sleep. The dark star had already appeared among the branches, faint, glimmering, more shape than light. It didn't shine. It erased. A tiny wound in the sky, a puncture through which something breathed. Hale felt it move behind her eyes when she blinked. The children didn't notice. The adults pretended not to. But Hale watched it wink, an eyelid of void sliding down for a heartbeat as though acknowledging her. It had happened only once before in her life, a long time ago. Her visions had worsened afterward. The ritual began. 2 villagers lifted the willow effigy and tilted it back, its head lolling with a wet, twisting sound. Hale unlatched the first of the wicker pens and slid her hands beneath the crow's sternum. Its body was feverish, trembling. It smelled faintly of iron and cold sap. The moment she lifted it, the bird let out a thin, drawn-out croak that made several villagers shiver. "Calling bird," Hale said softly, and raised it to the effigy's chest. The bird clambered inside on its own, and immediately began pecking its way up the inner ribwork, frantic and purposeful, as though following a map only birds and nightmares could decipher. 3 more followed. Each entered the effigy with the same instinctive frenzy. Each took its place along the branch lattice of ribs and spine, and then the effigy began to move. The pitch-soaked willow creaked as though softening, branches bending, the limbs scraping against bark and frost. The head tilted back on its woven neck. The open chest closed in slow, sickening increments until the 4 birds were sealed within, their bodies pressing against the tightening walls, their claws scraping for purchase. A murmur rippled through the gathered villagers as the effigy's ribs pulsed outward, once, and then again. Hale stepped closer. Her pulse shook her lantern flame. "Begin the calling," she murmured, and the birds obeyed. It began as a low, warbling cant, the sound of hunger and memory colliding. Then it swelled into a chorus of uncanny mimicry, distant footsteps, the shifting of snow, the crack of ice under weight far heavier than a bird. Crows could imitate human voices, yes, but these birds imitated something older, something Hale had only heard once in the darkest of her childhood dreams. A slow exhale echoing from beneath the frozen earth, a whisper of bone against stone, a long, dragging sound. The villagers trembled but held their ground. This was the purpose of the calling. Each bird was trained to recall a fragment of Skelmorok's ancient stirring, to imitate the sounds of his movements when he had last tried to push through the world's skin. By placing those mimicked sounds into the effigy, the villagers tricked the slumbering god. They fed him echoes of his own majesty so he would believe he had already begun to rise. It lulled him deeper, soothed his cosmic restlessness. A perverse lullaby, a grotesque cradle, a god pacified by his own shadow. As the calling reached its peak, the branches overhead rattled, not from wind, but from a deeper quake, something shifting far beneath the snowy floor of Thorn's Hollow. Hale braced herself, gripping her lantern until her knuckles blanched, and then she saw it. Beyond the trees, just for a breath, a second dark star flickered into existence beside the first. Smaller, sharper, like a shard of obsidian glass punched through the firmament. The 2 voids pulsed together, twin wounds, twin watchers. And between them, only for an instant, Hale glimpsed the impossible. A sphere-like, polished hematite, hovering in a slit of darkness, spinning slowly. It gleamed with a silent, internal storm. A sun made of swallowed light. A memory of another village, another ritual, another failure. And then it vanished, drawn back behind the punctured sky, as if embarrassed to be seen too early. Hale's breath rattled. A faint, metallic taste coated her tongue. She steadied herself, forced her voice to rise and join the calling, and the villagers followed, an eerie chant weaving with the birds' grotesque chorus. The effigy jerked once, then went still. The birds fell silent all at once. The dark star winked again, and the hollow breathed. It was done. But as Hale stepped away, her lantern casting long shadows across the effigy's twisted form, she felt that day 4 had cost them something. Not a life, not yet, but a sliver of safety they would not get back. The birds would be cut free come morning. They might live, or they might not. Skelmorok would sleep another day, but the sky had begun collecting debts, and Hale knew, deep in the thinning marrow of her faith, that the god beneath Marrowbone had started to dream with his eyes open.